Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's expert webinar titled Designing Azure Infrastructure and Networking. I am Abhishek from SpringPeople. We are India's largest enterprise training provider. I will be your moderator for today's session. In today's session, we have globally certified Azure expert Mr. Bipin Sinha. He is a professional architect and trainer with 27 plus years of experience in design and deploy modern DevOps framework, delivering customized learning solutions and effectiveness measurement in several visiting assignments. Mr. Bipin Sinha leisure-focused expertise in Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, Google GCP, DevOps automation, Linux admin, data science, MySQL database, MS SQL database, cloud security, networking, and many more. In today's webinar, Bipin Sinha will let us know about Azure Infrastructure Essentials, networking in Azure, scalability, and resilience. To all the participants, you can mention your questions in the chat box and it will be answered at the end of the session. Without further ado, let's start today's session. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Bipin Sinha to start the session. Over to you, Mr. Bipin.
So let me welcome you all to this specialized session about how to design if you are an architect, if you are going to be a consultant, a specific solutions which include infrastructure. Infrastructure, when we say it's about the core compute storage network using the various services which is available with Microsoft Azure. So let me begin with first case study. This is about a one fictitious company called Tailwind Traders. I hope many one of you, if you ever work with any Microsoft technology, this name may be familiar. There's a two name, one is called Contoso, second is called Tailwind Traders. Both are used by various feature across its product line. So the want to model which is already running on move to Microsoft, and you are a consultant supposed to be. So what your suggestion here? What you are going to recommend? What type of architecture would you recommend to this customer? So there are various requirements which we need to capture, understand in order to provide the right suggestion to this customer. And during each part, we will come up with some scenario, and I will ask what could be the possible solutions here, and we expect answer from you. Probably you can put your recommendation in the chat box. There is no good answer, there is no bad answer. All answer can be good. But one thing we have to always take care, whatever we recommend to the customer, it must fit into something called cloud adoption framework, because it's very important that our architecture solutions must be cost effective, secure, and perform pretty well, and able to handle any kind of. All right, so these are some of the bullet points which I like to bring. Now let's start with the very first part. As a consultant, as an architect, whatever solutions you supposed to provide to the customer, it must based on these 5 pillars. First, of course, the cost. Because if your solutions going to be over budget for the customer, no matter how good it is not going to be adopted. Same thing like that. For an example, if I need to buy a car and you propose a pretty high-end car, maybe even it has all the feature, I'm not going to buy. So your solution must be cost effective. Whatever we are going to suggest to the customer, end of the day, customer have to run and maintain that. So it should be easy for customer that our solution should not be so typical and difficult. Customers may find problem while managing it. It's called operational excellence. The third point is the performance efficiency. Definitely, any solution will only work when it performs pretty well. Because remember, it's cloud architecture. So it means that customers are going to access services over the internet. So the performance of your service or whatever the architecture we propose, it must perform pretty well. And definitely, every architecture is going to be a good architecture when it able to handle any kind of downtime problem. That is the reliability of our architecture. And the last but not least, how secure our architecture is. So any solution which we going to propose as a consultant, as an architect, these are the 5 pillars we always have to keep in our mind. So the module which we are going to discuss in this specific webcast is about how we are going to design the governance, because until and unless we have a robust governance architecture, no matter what we are going to propose is not going to fit into any of these 5 pillars. Most of the solutions revolve around compute, which include the virtual machine in the cloud. So what are the best design pattern we should use? And it's all about data nowadays. Data, how to the, and the last, how the data inflow, and all, every service is all about the network. So governance, compute, network. These are the 5 see today, understand today, discuss today all. When look cloud as our hosting provider, how we can delegate our administrative control, how we can implement budgeting for each and every department, how we can track the cost right from the enterprise hierarchy to the bottom of a company. These all are called governance. So when we say that we are going to adopt cloud, or any company or any customer which to choose to use cloud, it is pretty much important that we must understand that customer hierarchy as terms of business, and then we should propose the best governance model. So any customer, when they sign up cloud service, especially Microsoft Cloud, the very first hierarchy by default get created is called management root group. So if you go to Microsoft Azure portal and just type management group, the very first thing you see here is a root. Now, under the root, we are going to create, or we should propose, sometimes it is as per the business division, sometimes it is as per the location of the business, something called management group. For example, if we have a company called SpringPeople, may handle different businesses. For example, one of the business is called training business. So for a training business, we are going to create one management group. For consulting business, we are going to propose second management group. And for any kind of a support business, we are going to propose the third management group. So management group is more like a business entity. And you can easily create the management group when you use Microsoft Azure. Just have to search management group in the portal. Within each management group, depend on the type of functions. For example, in a training, probably we can have a domestic customer and we can have an international customer. So for domestic customer, we probably going to create one subscription. For international customer, we probably go with the second subscription. So subscription is going to be the second hierarchy. Now, each of the subscription depend upon the function of the business. We can create something called actually go create our resources, which can be virtual machine, storage, network, database, and so on. So how the hierarchy work? The top is a management group, which actually represent your subscription within the business division. The second hierarchy, which can be a function. Then the resource group, which can be a location, which can be a sub function within the main company functions. And within the resource group, we are going to create the resources. And this is very important. So it means that when we have this management hierarchy or governance, we can easily track down. For example, if I get $1 million bill, the CFO of the company probably want to know which business division and within the which business division, which function or which location consume more Azure resource services. If we have this hierarchy, we can easily go and locate and track down. So the very first thing is to design a perfect governance model in Microsoft Azure, which include management group, subscriptions, resource group, and the resources. Few things which we always have to keep in our mind. For example, as you can see in the diagram, we have a company called Tailwind Traders. So for the Tailwind Traders, we create a management group called Tailwind, which can be a Tailwind corporate. Within the Tailwind, we created sub-management group, which like a sales, corporate, and IT. Within the IT, we are going to create another management group called production. What Microsoft suggests should keep this architecture more flat. As you can see that now we have a 4 level of management group. It's a little complicated because now each management group we have to create subscription. Within each subscription we may have to create resource group. So it hierarchy go pretty long. The first suggestion, keep it as flat as simple. Probably sales, corporate and IT looks good, but within the IT, instead of creating production, we may go and create the subscription instead of a management group. Always consider while creating the management group, are you going to create it for geographical location or maybe probably for a department, the name of the department. So you need to be planned that which business hierarchy represented as management group and which business hierarchy represented as subscription. So when we plan exactly the hierarchy, the first one, when we have a top level business functions, we prefer to create management group, and probably for locations, probably for further division within that business functions, we like to go with subscription. This is very fundamental unit for separating your resource from one part to another. For example, let's say in a sales we have a 2 division called a small business cell or enterprise business cell. So we go and create 2 subscription, a small business cell subscription and enterprise business cell. So in this case, we can implement a different security policy that, okay, on a small business subscription, no one should create a virtual machine which is more than 8 GB of RAM. And we enforce that policy on a subscription A. While on subscription B, we probably even have a more higher hierarchy. Like we can create up to 16 GB RAM of server. So we need to consider what type of probably a policy required. We can even go and define the budget. We can also go and define different policies, delegate the administrative role. For example, John can manage a small business subscription, while Julia can manage enterprise business subscription. It is always a good practice that if different business require a common subscription, instead of creating a specialized subscription like a small business subscription, we can create a common probably like a business subscription only, no small, no enterprise, and where I can also create my resource, you can also create your resource. So it's a kind of a building block before service. So likewise that if you look at this whole example, Calvin Traders is a management group. Under that we have created 2 management group called corporate and IT. Within corporate, we create 2 subscription, that is a HR and a legal. Here we also can create management group, but we prefer to create the subscription because subscription is going to be my boundary for policy, going to be boundary for my costing. create a subscription, and this key part is called resource group. So first root, second management group, third subscription, and each subscription can have more than one resource group. So basically resource group is a kind of a logical grouping where we go and create different resources of Azure. For example, it can be a database, it can be a network, it can be a virtual machine, which probably serve one common purpose. For HR department, I created 3 servers, where in a resource group called HR. All right. So it means that all the resources which probably have some common sharing purpose, resource group is the fundamental unit to be created. Resource group can also have their own advantage. For an example, within a department, if I want to assign a specific privilege to someone else, probably my HR head, I can go and give a specific privilege through something which is called as an RBAC, role-based access control. Rather than making them administrator, I only said that, okay, you want to shut down the machine, all right, here you go. You can only shut down the machine, you can't do anything. So you are no more administrator, but you can still perform a specific job function. We can also enable something which is called as a lock on resource groups. Delete lock, then no one can go and delete any of resource group accidentally, because the moment we try to hit delete button, it will not do any action. Rather than it will give you a message that, hey, it is protected, you can't delete that. So depend on the scenario, we can have a subscription can have a one resource group, subscription can have multiple resource group. As I said, if we want to assign someone a specific job to do, for example, can you shut down the version? Can you create a SQL data? If you and I can assign going to be a backup, it means that you can go and take a backup. This is what exactly the RBAC is. So if you, when we create an RBAC, we need to keep something in our mind, something which is called list access privilege. List access privilege means we only grant the permission which the user need. User need only to take the backup. All right, then why should I give you the another permission? So I will only give you a permission to take backup of this specific resource in this specific resource group. So there we need to understand what type of role user need to play. Sometimes it happens that some specific task is not in a listed role. In that case, we can create the custom task. For example, I want to grant a user to probably create and delete both. Maybe create option is available, but delete option is not available. Then in that case, we can go and create a new role and say that, okay, you can also delete. Whenever we try to provide an RBAC, chances that user may already inherit some other kind of a privilege. So it means that it can overlap. Let's say one of the assignment on the subscription, it said that, hey, user, you can delete anything. while in the resource group I said that no user can delete anything. So it's going to contrast now. On the top level we say delete everything, on the bottom level we say you cannot delete everything. So we need to also always analyze this conflicting scenario. So it is always advisable that we should check before assigning the new permission, that what others permission this user might carry. All right. So the best way of defining the whole security boundary is combine Azure policy with Azure RBAC. For an example, I say, okay, you can create any virtual machine, but you should not create a virtual machine in the Europe region, because I'm worried about some kind of a policy violation. So I want to restrict that. Even if you try to pick up the region, any region in the Europe, it will be restricted. So I create a policy and I implement that policy on subscription. In that subscription, all Europe region is prohibited. Now, this is restricting through policy. So it means that I, as a user, if I want to create any server, if I try to pick up any region like a France, I cannot do that. But let's say if I pick up India and I create a virtual machine with 48 GB of RAM, it's too costly. It is not required. But I have a permission, so I go and create that. So here Azure policy will not work. Here we have to use the RBAC. Now in the RBAC, probably we are going to define that I, as a user, number one, can I create a virtual machine? So this is all we have to consider when we are creating the assignment. Just all right. So it means that we need to combine both policy when we want a restrictions which is more like a at a wider level, and we have to use the RBAC when we want to delegate a certain rights, certain permissions. Can you create a virtual machine? Can you delete the virtual machine? Can you back up the storage account? This is all come under RBAC. So it's good to mix and match. Now we have a case study here, and I just want your input. For an example, the company, if you remember in the very first slide, Tailwind Traders. So Tailwind Traders has two main business unit. One business unit which handle the apparel business, and second which handle a sporting goods business. So there is a two business, and each of the business unit, they have three major department. One is called product development department, second is called marketing department, third is called sales department. What exactly the Tailwind Traders say that design the governance hierarchy so that we can track the spending of the Azure services, what the total bill and who consume what. So you as a consultant now, what you suggest, where to use management group and where to use subscription. Once again, let me reiterate. Talvin Traders have a two main business unit: apparel business, a sporting good business. So to represent these two business unit, what you do, you suggest management group or subscription? All right, think about it. In my view, I will go with management group for the two business unit, and the three department which we talked about, the production development, marketing, and sales. I would like to create the subscription beneath the management group. Let's move to the second part, the compute solutions. This is very important flow as an architect, because sometimes we have to take the decision if we moving the customer which is already running their business through on-premises to the cloud, which service we should pick in the cloud. Because remember, in the cloud we also have a PaaS services which is not a part of your on-premises offering. So if you look at the whole flow, if we have a virtual machine or we have a server, for an example, and if we want to migrate the server, if we decide to migrate the server, we again go and define that whether we should migrate as it is without any modification, and we should use any specific cloud service which can probably host this application which is running in the server. If we decide to lift and shift, again we can make a decision that does it need to be converted as an image, Docker image. If the decision is not no, then we can probably again take a further decision. Should we go and use the virtual machine to move this server to the cloud, or we can only host the application which is running probably maybe a .NET application in Azure App Service? So we have to take a decision here. Again, if we have to define that the server which the application which is running is a high compute resources, then probably we can decide that okay, we should not lift and shift, rather than we will only move the application or the process to probably Azure batch service. So all these services which you are seeing here, for example, if we decide to move the application which is running inside the server as a image, Docker image, we can again decide should we use the container instance or Kubernetes service in the cloud. So this flow make it more easy to take the decision, and likewise that there are flow for each services, and this is a public flow. It means that when you do a Microsoft document search, you can find this flow pretty easily. Remember, when we talked about the compute power or compute machine, it is something which builds constantly. So when we decide to use the virtual machine in the cloud, Azure virtual machine, the first thing it should be with one virtual network. So it's always a good idea that we should always create a virtual network beforehand along with a governance model, And then we place the virtual machine inside that network, because the network can be protected with the various security services, including Azure Firewall, DDoS protection, or NSG. Always use the meaningful name of the virtual machine, the naming convention. For example, in the SpringPeople, we always use the prefix SP hyphen, and then we define what this server is. Okay, it's a database. So SP SpringPeople hyphen DB database hyphen, and then probably we can go further like a VM1, VM2, VM3. Always use the perfect location, the location which is nearest to the user. So for example, if our customer, if our most of the business user located in, let's say in India, or probably in West India or South India, we should not select the region like a history base, because in that case, because our user who is using that service are located in a different geography, when they try to make a connection, it will be pretty slow, and sometimes it also have a compliance challenge, because when we try to store some data, if the data is a personal in a nature, you should not store the data out of the country where you are doing the business. So location is very important, both from compliance perspective as well as latency perspective. Select the right type of a storage. You have a both option: managed disk, unmanaged disk. Managed disk, you have a various advantage. It's completely managed by Azure, so the backup and all is taken care by Azure itself. Select the right operating system. Remember, when you select the operating system, you also have to take care about the licensing. So if the customer already have a license, and especially the cloud license to using that server, for example, if I want to use Windows Server 2022 or 2019, and if I have a on-premises license, I cannot use that license to use in the virtual machine running in Azure. We have to convert that license from on-premises to on-cloud license, or probably hybrid license, which give me a right to use the operating system both on cloud or on premises. It is always advisable that you should keep the VM up to date with the patches. For that, you can use any external services like WSUS, System Center, or if all are a virtual machine running in the cloud, then we can use the update service of Azure. And always monitor the virtual machine for performance and security point of view. For that, we can use the Azure Monitor. So there are different scenarios which should be used, and especially when the customer require a full control. Full control. For example, if I am Infosys, I have a various security control I want to implement on my backend platform. For that, I require the full control access. And for that purpose, we want to use the virtual machine. Now, remember, when we use the virtual machine, and when we decide to use the virtual machine, we should keep the various points in our mind. Virtual machine is a very good. When customer want to migrate as it is, they are running everything in a server, and they said that, hey, I want the same environment there. Do not change the environment. Do not use any PaaS service or container service. I want simple. I am running in the server. I want to see the server. When customer want a full control on the backend OS, probably they want to implement their own security control. Like they want to disable some services. They want to enable the Windows firewall, for an example. Many customers also use the Azure virtual machine as an DR. So they create the replica of their VM or their server, which is running on premises, and put it as a virtual machine in the cloud. So in case if something goes wrong with the on premises, they can switch on the server which is running in the cloud. Another advantage which virtual machine give, and we should always be very, very peculiar about that. Probably we can sensitize our customer as well, that if customer running some specific workload which require a very high performance compute, if you go and purchase that or upgrade that on premises, it's not so easy. It's number one is the cost is very high. Second, availability of the hardware. So Microsoft Azure or in the cloud, you also have a HPC workload. So it means that high performance compute. Of course, the cost is very, very high, but you can get the GPU based server, like a data science, machine learning, right? If I want to do some kind of a data analytics job, which require a very huge compute power, we can use that Azure virtual machine in the cloud. Yep. Now, when we use Azure virtual machine, it again have a different SKUs. So depend at what exactly we want to run. Just for a generic workload, like a web server, go with the general purpose. But for example, if I want to run an database like Oracle, SQL, they require a very faster read and write IOPS. So your disk, underlying disk or a storage, it must give you a better IOPS. We can go with the storage optimized. If I want to run some machine learning algorithm, which required a huge compute power, faster. Instead of a CPU, we can go with a GPU-based virtual machine. So I mean to say, we have a different purposes. So it's better to ask the customer, what application do you want to run? If the application is a standard one, known to everyone, like an Oracle, we can suggest the machine. But if sometimes they have an in-house grown application, it means that outside world do not know. So in that case, probably we can do a more inquiry about that, which resources it consume more, CPU, memory, RAM, or a network. And according to that, we proposed which family of the virtual machine is perfect fine. One good part, when you use Azure Migrate, the Azure Migrate during the assessment phase, it understand which type of application and what exactly it uses more, and then accordingly it also proposed which type of virtual machine SKU is right for this customer in this workload. Here are few scenario, because many times customer say that, okay, I do not want to go with the 100 virtual machine, because not necessarily every time the usage is so high. I want that I will go with the minimum, let's say a 5 virtual machine, 6 virtual machine, but it can add a new virtual machine, means more compute in the background, as and when the load increases, we can propose the skill set. So different scenario we have when we can propose the more than one virtual machine, or we can simply propose the skill set. When customer definitely need that whenever their application start uses very high, the backend compute should increase, means number of virtual machines should increase, which can be load balanced further. You should propose the skill set. Otherwise, if the requirement is almost fixed, we can say that, okay, we can go with the 4 virtual machine and we can just go for a load balancer instead of creating a skill set. Now, the second most important thing that many time customer running some kind of a code, which can be a .NET Java code or application or a process, which require a very high compute power, or you can say that it require multiple things to go in a parallel processing. So instead of giving them a virtual machine, because and if you give a virtual machine, somehow you are actually predicting that how much CPU, how much memory, because you have to select the SKU. But when we are not sure how much CPU, how much memory it is going to take, it's very hard to predict that what virtual machine. So this is how the Azure batch service come into the picture. When we are not known to what exactly the service and how much CPU and memory it is going to consume, or we want to parallel the very large set of job process in one go, Azure has a batch service which is called Azure Batch. Suggest the customer that instead of creating a virtual machine, go with Azure Batch service. Now, in most of the cases, what I have seen personally, that customer, either they are running some kind of a database on the server, or they are running some kind of an web application, nowadays even the mobile app. Azure say that when you are running an application, which is a web-based application, mobile app application, rather than using Azure virtual machine until and unless you need the control of the virtual machine. If you do not want to manage the underlying hardware, underlying operating system, Azure suggests that use Azure App Service. So whenever you encounter a scenario that when the customer said that, okay, I am running a web server, Apache, Tomcat, IIS, I'm running Java application, I'm running .NET application. Suggest that customer that when you moving to the cloud, move your application. Do not need to lift and shift the whole environment, including the operating system in a virtual machine. Only migrate the application in Azure App Service. Because App Service has many functionality, like it has a staging where you can create a dev, test and production environment. It can integrate with the various repository like GitHub. And it has many other features like an inbuilt app insight. So it is always advisable when we are designing an architecture for the customer, design the best. Design their compute solution, design their app service, design the governance, design the RBAC, design their policies. And these are the how various feature of the app service can be handy. For an example, if customer said that, okay, I want an app to be deployed in a test environment first. then it should go to pre-prod environment or UAT environment, then it should go to prod environment. If it is a virtual machine, then you have to create 3 virtual machine group, which is very, it's not only costly, it is also increase the administrative overhead. Rather than we go to app service, we create 3 slots. So whenever we design an app service, always keep in the mind what app service plan. You have a S1, you have a premium plan, you have a basic plan also. So according to the requirement of the customer, we should propose the right plan to them so that they should be aware about their costing. And many other features like auto scaling and so on. Now, when we have a container-based application to deploy, we have a 2 service called ACI or ACR. Azure Container Instance is very good when we have, you can say, low touch application, or you can say that applications which are in a testing mode, because it will only give you 1 compute. It doesn't do any auto scaling, but you can run your image as a container just inside the Azure Container Instance. So when we use the Azure Container Instance, we always suggest for the workload which are still in a testing phase or which is a low touched application which doesn't require any auto scaling. So this is the one problem. It doesn't do any auto scaling. But when you have a image service, and probably you have a microservices based architecture where you have multiple images and they all want to deploy in a production environment where you need an auto scaling feature, auto healing feature, go for Kubernetes, because in a Kubernetes you will get a cluster group of node, and you know that Azure Kubernetes service is a free service. We do not pay for the service, we do not pay for the master node, we only pay for the number of worker node. So suggest the customer to use AKS when they want to run the container images in production. They require auto scaling, especially when they have a microservice based architecture. So when they require a scalability, when they require auto healing, and all other features which make the AKS default choice. As I said, AKS as a service free. You not need to pay anything for the master node because it is shared. So half of the work is already done. You only have to add your worker node and you're good to go. So it also support the ACR, which is Azure Container Registry, where you can host your private images. As again, when we plan for the production workload for the AKS, we must select the right region, whether it is in the US, whether it is in India. For the high availability, we should select the paired region. Like if we are selecting East-West, the paired region. So have a quick fallback. Thus, AKS is available across all the geography now, but still maybe some functionality is not available on region A to region B that we need to check before we are provisioning the AKS. We can also use the persistent storage. So we can mount Azure file service as a persistent storage inside the container to store my data. Now, many times customer also need a compute to run some kind of a specific job. It is not running continuously. Maybe for example, I want to make all my servers shut down at 5:30 a.m. So it means that at the 5:30 only that Azure functions need to run. Or probably I want to copy the data from department A blob storage to probably my archive storage. So when customer need to run some code, some application code to perform some specific job, but it should not run continuously. Instead of creating a virtual machine and install the .NET or a Java inside that, and then you can probably trigger that run, use Azure function, because Azure virtual machine, the problem that even if you are not running anything and it is up, being constantly charged. So better we should use function as a service, which is also in AWS is known as Lambda. Now, this is another scenario. This is a customer which have a front-end server. It is very heavily demanded. Means lot of hits will come. They also have a database in a backend, and they run some kind of a logic which are based on .NET. So if you look at these three scenarios, which one you should propose? Any one of you want to try? For front end, which service did you like to suggest? Virtual machine or app service? Okay, so here for a front end, we would suggest use Azure App Service. For .NET Framework or business logic, I do suggest to use Azure Function, and here use Azure SQL in the backend. Now this is very important because data is a gold, as I said. So every company have to maintain the data. Sometimes it is a compliance requirement. But which data? So data can be classified as a structured data, which is when they are stored as a table, like your CSV file, like your SQL, like your Cosmo DB. It can be semi-structured, like a YAML-based data, JSON-based data, or XML-based data. It can be a structured, like your PDF file, your movie, your images, your emails. So for different data, we should propose the different storage options in the cloud. Now, it is always advisable when we propose on a storage for the customer, select the right location, because location is a very important. Otherwise, latency can be a problem. Always select the right plan. It can be a premium and a standard. Select the right replication. Can be LRS, GRS. How customer is sensitive towards the data. While selecting the location, always keep the compliance in mind. Because if you are doing a business in India, you cannot store the data of Indian citizen to outside India. It is a compliance challenge. And of course, the various security measures. For example, do you want the data at rest to be encrypted? Maybe use Key Vault. So there are different considerations which we need to take care when we are planning the storage. It is always advisable that we should have some kind of a redundancies. For example, if I select LRS, it go and create only 3 copies of my storage in a data center A. So in that case, we are protected. In case in the Microsoft data center, if one storage fail, physical storage fail, I as a customer, I do not need to bother because my data is still available in the 2 more storage. But in case if one data center itself fail, not the storage, the data center itself fail, then Azure still have a copy if we use the zone redundant storage. So within one availability zone, we have more than one data center. If the whole region get fail, I stored all my data in Mumbai, and Mumbai, all 3 data center fail. But if we have a geo redundant, maybe my another data can be also stored in a Pune data center. So dependent what level of redundancy you are. Remember, each redundancy have a cost implications. But yes, it's depend on the risk appetite of the customer, which should select the right storage redundancies type. Now, one of the mistake which I always observe, even with the enterprise level customer, they put all their data in a blob just like that. At end of the day, when the cost comes, they said, why the blob is costly? Yeah, blob is not costly. We are not using the tier. For example, we do not specify anything. By default, the data is treated as a hot data. Hot data is always charged higher. So when the data is not frequently used, probably you decide to move it in a cool storage or maybe an archive storage. So selecting the right tier, it is always very useful. And if as an administrator we find it very difficult, probably we can use the life cycle rule that after every 60 days, if any data which have a probably a prefix or suffix, for example, in SpringPeople, when we create an invoice, we put a word like a SP in the beginning of every invoice, and then the month. So SPM means SpringPeople March. So all SPM should move to a cold storage or archive storage after 3 months, because March is over. Now we are in October. So why should we put it in a hot storage? One of the consideration we always have to take care in our designing, the regulatory requirement. Every company have to do some kind of an audit always. If they are in industry, it can be industrial audit, it can be a government audit, it can be a compliance audit, or even the customer want to get some kind of an ISO level certifications. They have to perform an audit, and during the audit, your auditor required that your account should be locked. No one should be able to delete the data, modify the data. So blob will allow you to create some kind of an immutable storage where it is locked. So it means that even if you try to delete any file, still the file is preserved. So we can use different retention policies, that whether any type of data which is stored in the storage account during the time of audit, if it is a 3 days audit, it cannot be deleted. Or if we are not sure about how much time the audit can take, we can put a legal hold. Legal hold means indefinite period of time. Till the time you lift the legal hold, no one can delete the data. So it is always considered that the storage account which you are creating, the blob storage which you create or propose to the customer, always ask with the customer that in this blob what you are supposed to do, which type of data you are going to put, whether this data is a part of your compliance or regulatory check. If yes, probably you can design the storage, and you can also design some kind of a legal hold or retention policies. Azure File Service, as you know that it's a replacement of on-premises file server, where we can access the data, file data from anywhere. You just have to mount like a jet drive, and using that Azure file, we can actually see the replacement. You can create same kind of a folder hierarchy. Each hierarchy you can put a different policies and rights. So when we have to compare or choose between Azure files and Azure blob storage, you have to first take the decision. Do you want to have a requirement to shift your file server? If it is a file server on premises, you want to just migrate to Azure cloud, use Azure file server. But if you have a storage account, a storage running in your on premises like a SAN storage, think to move to the blob storage. And second decision, if you want to access the file, only one file or two files, using the HTTP URL, choose blob, because blob storage, each file can have a URL, while in Azure file can be accessed as a whole drive. So depend on that what your scenario is. If you want to move the storage, use blob. If you want to move the file server, use Azure file share. So we have a various security which can be part of that. For an example, we can integrate our storage account with our virtual network, and virtual network can be further protected with your Azure firewall. We can encrypt the data which is stored in the storage using our own encryption key, which can be stored in the Azure Key Vault. Or we can only allow the storage account to be accessed within a specific virtual network by means of private endpoint. So all this security is inbuilt. So if the customer has a concern, okay, I can put my data in the Azure storage. What is the guarantee of security? Yeah, you have a various security. You have encryptions, you have a firewall, you have a private endpoint. You also have a keys, key-based access. You have an immutable storage where you can put a legal hold or time-based retention policies. Everything is there. Now we have another case study here, that tailwind traders have some media files, marketing literature, and corporate documents. Which storage account would you prefer here? So if you ask me, for media file, which is unstructured data, I would like to ask customer to use blob storage. For marketing literature, I can ask customer to use the file server. For the corporate document, I can still go and ask probably to use the blob storage. So depend on that what type of data the customer has, and we can propose according to the different services. Now the last part is the virtual network. So remember, any service which we design in the cloud, customer has to interact using internet. So it means that some data need to go inside the data center of Microsoft, which is called ingress. And then some data need to come out from the Microsoft, which is called egress. So Azure Virtual Network is the fundamental principle which can be an interface between you and Microsoft. So when we send any traffic, it will first hit the Microsoft firewall, own firewall, and from there it will redirect it to your Azure Virtual Network. So there are various type of services which you can build on top of Microsoft Azure. As I said, you can have a DDoS, which will help you to protect your all resources, which is a part of your Azure Virtual Network, from any kind of a DOS attack, denial of service attack. You can use Azure Traffic Manager to redirect the right request, or Azure DNS to redirect the right request probably to the right service inside the Azure Virtual Network. Azure also have a secure connectivity like a VPN express route. So depend on the customer requirement and the cost. You can suggest that rather than going through the open internet, use VPN. And if you want a guaranteed bandwidth, go with the express route. And if you have a lot of networks like a virtual networks, virtual network peering, express route, VPN, use some kind of a hub. So hub service is used in a Microsoft, which will where all type of external connectivity will go and terminate, and then internally it can go and redirected inside. Now the virtual network, as you are aware, that it based on your IP schema, virtual network can have a further subdivision as a subnet, and each subnet you can have your own protection with means of the ACL or NSG, and then you can define that how the subnet can do the routing. Network security group is a fundamental mini firewall, you can say, where you can allow or deny any incoming outgoing traffic based on their IP address, based on the protocol. So each of the traffic which is in, which is out of your subnet is going to be filtered out, checked by your NSG, which is a network security group. If you have more than one server and you do not want that the server should be exposed to outside world, you can expose it through a public IP, which can be built on top of your load balancer. So any people will hit load balancer, and load balancer then redirect the traffic internally on their private IPs. So in that way, you are actually protecting your valuable resources which are running in the inside the virtual network. And then when we use the different load balancing mechanism, for example, when I type bbc.com, it go and hit a different application. But when we say bbc.com/India, it go and hit the different server. So how this redirection work? This is how the DNS come into the picture. So each one is mapped to a different DNS host name, and depending on the URL, we can use the DNS based load balancing, which is a part of your traffic manager service. So traffic manager see the header, and the base of the header, it will redirect your request to a specific server which might be running in a different geographical location. So all right, this is all from me. If you have any question in further, please put it in a chat box. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Bipin Sinha, for your invaluable insights on technology. I'm sure it was certainly a very informative session for all of you. If you guys are interested in learning more about Azure, do check out our super discounted batches of virtual instructor-led trainings on our website, springpeople.com. These VILT trainings are leveraged online from the comforts of your home and flexible as per your schedule and location. If you do not find any suitable batches, we would be happy to discuss and schedule private batches for you. If you don't have time to join live online, then do try out our affordable self-paced courses. For more information, do write to us at training@springpeople.com or call on our number displayed on the current slide. Now we will open the forum to answer questions that we have received during the session. So let's get our questions answered. Over to you, Mr. Bipin Sinha.
This presentation will be shared. Nikhil, presentation is just include the summary. Yeah, I will check that whether it can be shared with you or not. But I think that the legality is that this presentation is an internal presentation for SpringPeople. So yeah, let me check and probably we will get back to you. Sati Vraj, yes. So when we say on-premises server, we have to understand that which application we are talking about, right? We have just shown you the flow that if application running on premises in a server, should we migrate lift and shift? Should we migrate in an app service, batch service, or as a container? If it is a lift and shift, it is straightforward. Just use Azure Migrate, and it is going to do the assessment of your running infrastructure, and it will help you with the right SKU. It will also create the image, and it will lift and shift in one go. For Azure Active Directory, there is no migration. For Azure Active Directory, you have to use the Azure Directory Sync connector to sync all user their password on Azure Active Directory, and then you can use that. But if you want to create like an ADC, it is also possible. For that, you have to use the virtual machine, create a VPN type of connection, and then you just run the same DC promo and promote the machine as a ADC or additional Active Directory. But there is no straightforward migration of Azure Active Directory because Azure already have an Active Directory. And yes, business continuity, we have discussed a lot of options. For example, we can use a scale set, we can use kind of a load balancer, we have auto scaling group. So depend on that what exactly we are looking for. So in a nutshell, if I look at your question, I suggest Azure Migrate, I suggest Active Directory Sync, and I suggest that you should use any scaling technology like an auto scaling. Perfect. There is no difference in much difference between hot and a cold. So remember, when I say hot, Microsoft put your data in a storage system where you have a faster connectivity. Okay, but your price will be higher because Microsoft will charge premium for your faster read and write and faster data travel. When we say cold storage, Microsoft put it in a network which is shared among millions of customers. So naturally, traffic which is going to the storage system is not exclusive for you. All other customers using the same traffic. So slowness will be there. So probably same 1 GB file, if you try to download from hot, it will take 1 minute. And in a cold storage, it might take 30 minutes. Yeah. Session recording, Sasank. We will again revert back to you. I think that session will be available for you because it's a recorded one. Correct sequence of Avinash, the correct sequence that first you need an application. Okay. Now, if this application running in an app service, you have to protect it with WAF. But this application probably can be further protected with your, you can say, if it is running inside a virtual machine, then how it will work? First, you have your WAF, your load balancer. Load balancer will go and connect your WAF, and then it will redirect to your NSG, and then it will come inside your server. So where you are running an application, it depends. So if it is an app service, then you have a front door, then you have a WAF, then you have a your own app service. It is a virtual machine. Then the first which is come into the picture is a load balancer. Then you have a WAF. Then you have a NSG. Avinas? All right, no more questions? Yeah, welcome. No more questions? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day ahead to all of you. Hope to see you in the session once you decide to probably go ahead with your enrollment plan. Anurag, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. We shall be sending out the webinar recording to you all participants soon. I request you to kindly provide feedback before signing off, which will help us improve the quality of our future events. Thanks again for joining us today. Signing off on behalf of Team Spring People. Hope to see you again for our next expert webinar. Thank you and bye.